What if the sound of boiling came not from dinner, but from something far more horrifying, like your own mother's severed head on the stove? Today's story takes us to a quiet suburban home in Knoxville, Tennessee, 2016. On the surface, it looked like any other family home, but in the basement of that house, something unspeakable was about to unfold. Something so twisted, so methodically evil, that when investigators finally pieced it all together, they struggled to believe a human being could orchestrate such horror against the very people who gave him life. This is the story of Joel Guy Jr., a man who didn't just betray his parents, he murdered them. And then he tried to erase every trace of what he'd done. If you're new here, welcome to Younes Samir's channel, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of true crime. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another chilling tale. Let's continue after the intro. You might think you've heard stories of family betrayal before. You might believe you understand the depths of human depravity, but what Joel Guy Jr. did to his parents over that Thanksgiving weekend in 2016 will challenge everything you thought you knew about the capacity of evil. And that's where our story truly begins. Joel Michael Guy Sr. and Lisa Guy appeared to have built the American dream. A hard-working couple from West Knox County, they raised 2 daughters and a son in what seemed like a loving, supportive household. Joel Sr. was known as a man who could fix anything. The kind of father who taught his children the value of hard work and self-resilience. Lisa was remembered by colleagues as compassionate and thorough, someone who genuinely cared about the welfare of others. Their son, Joel Guy Jr., was the baby of the family, born when his parents were already established in their careers and comfortable in their lives. Unlike his sisters, who had grown up, moved out, and built independent lives for themselves, Joel Jr. seemed stuck in a state of extended adolescence. At 28 years old, he was still financially dependent on his parents, living in Louisiana while pursuing what appeared to be an endless series of educational pursuits. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Joel Jr. wasn't just casually dependent on his parents' generosity, he was completely and utterly reliant on their financial support for every aspect of his existence. Rent, paid by mom and dad, food, covered by their card, car payments, insurance, spending money, and all flowing from Joel Sr. and Lisa's bank accounts directly into their son's hands. But in November 2016, that financial lifeline was about to be severed forever. Joel Sr. and Lisa had made a decision that would seal their fate. After decades of hard work, they were ready to retire. They had saved diligently, planned carefully, and were looking forward to finally enjoying the fruits of their labor. But their retirement meant something else entirely. They could no longer afford to support their adult son's lifestyle. That conversation had already taken place. Joel Jr. had been told, come January, the financial support would end. He would need to find a way to support himself. For most people, this would present a challenging but necessary transition into independence. But for Joel Guy Jr., it represented something else entirely. It represented a problem that needed to be solved, and the solution he devised would be more horrific than anyone could have imagined. What makes Joel Guy Jr.'s crimes particularly chilling isn't their brutality, it's the meticulous planning. This wasn't a crime of passion, no moment of rage that spiraled out of control. This was a carefully orchestrated plan, documented in what investigators would later call his book of premeditation. Imagine discovering a handwritten manual for murder, complete with detailed instructions, supply lists, and a step-by-step procedure for disposing of human bodies. Page after page of his own handwriting, outlining every aspect of what he had planned to do to his parents. He had researched the most effective ways to kill, calculated the quantities of chemicals needed to dissolve human remains, planned the timing down to the minute, ensuring he'd have enough time to complete his gruesome work before anyone came looking. This level of detail was staggering. Joel Jr. wrote out shopping lists for supplies: muriatic acid, hydrogen peroxide, bleach, plastic containers, knives. Even researched the chemical reactions that would occur when these substances mixed with organic matter. He had planned for contingencies, what he would do if neighbors heard screams or if someone arrived unexpectedly. But perhaps the most disturbing part? He had written about his motivation with cold, clinical detachment. The money. It always came back to the money. Joel Jr. had calculated that if his parents died before they changed their wills or spent their retirement savings, everything, the house, the savings, the life insurance policies, it would all become his. He wouldn't need to find a job or learn to support himself. His twisted logic? Murder wasn't just an option. It was a practical solution to his financial problems. As Thanksgiving 2016 approached, Joel Guy Jr. began putting his plan into motion. He purchased the chemicals and tools he had listed in his notebook. Then he made arrangements to travel from Louisiana to Tennessee for the holiday weekend. He had prepared to transform a family gathering into a scene of unimaginable horror. Thanksgiving weekend began like countless others in the Guy household. Family members gathered, sharing stories and catching up. Joel Jr.'s sisters were there with their families, filling the house with laughter and warmth. For Joel Sr. and Lisa, it must have felt like the perfect holiday. Their children and grandchildren under one roof, creating memories that make all those years of hard work feel worthwhile. But as the weekend progressed, family members began to leave. By Sunday, only Joel Sr., Lisa, and Joel Jr. remained, and so the stage was set. Joel Jr. had been waiting for this moment when he would be alone with his parents. No witnesses, no interruptions. Can you imagine the psychological state of a person who could sit at a Thanksgiving table, sharing a meal with people he was planning to murder? Who could look into his mother's eyes as she served him food, knowing within hours he intended to end her life? Who could listen to his father's stories and laugh at the jokes, while mentally rehearsing the steps he'd take to kill him? The level of detachment required for such deception speaks to a kind of psychological darkness that most of us cannot comprehend. But Joel Jr. had crossed that line long before setting foot in his parents' house that weekend. In his mind, Joel Sr. and Lisa were no longer his parents. They were obstacles in his financial security, problems that needed to be solved. So, as Sunday evening turned into Monday morning, Joel Guy Jr. began to put his plan into action. The house that had been filled with warmth and family just hours earlier was about to become the scene of the most brutal family murders in Tennessee history. Joel Sr. was the first to die. The 61-year-old man who had worked his entire life to provide for his family was attacked by the son he had raised and supported. The medical examiner later determined he suffered multiple stab wounds, indicating a prolonged and vicious assault. This wasn't a quick, merciful death. This was sustained violence, the kind that speaks to rage and determination rather than momentary loss of control. If Joel Jr. felt any remorse after killing his father, it didn't stop him from proceeding with the rest of his plan. Lisa Guy, the woman who had given birth to him, raised him, and continued to support him well into his adult years, was next. Like her husband, Lisa suffered multiple stab wounds. The woman who had dedicated her career to protecting children died at the hands of her own child, in the home where she had raised him with love and care. But for Joel Jr., the murders were just the beginning. What came next would elevate his crimes from brutal family homicide to something approaching the realm of the unthinkable. Because Joel Jr. hadn't just planned to kill his parents, he had planned to make them disappear entirely. Using knives from his parents' own kitchen, Joel Jr. began the systematic dismemberment of their bodies. He didn't simply cut their bodies into pieces, methodically separated limbs and joints, making deep gashes in their flesh to allow the chemicals he had purchased to penetrate more effectively. The medical examiner later counted dozens of cuts and wounds on each body, far beyond what would have been necessary to cause death. This was mutilation, on a scale that suggested either complete psychological detachment or pure enjoyment of violence. But perhaps the most disturbing detail of all? What Joel Jr. did with his mother's head. Rather than simply disposing of it with the rest of her remains, he placed Lisa Guy's severed head in a large pot on the stove. He turned on the heat, and he began to boil his mother's head, like it was nothing more than a piece of meat for dinner. The image is so grotesque, so fundamentally wrong, it challenges our ability to process it. This wasn't just murder. This level of desecration speaks to a complete absence of humanity, a total severing of the bonds that connect us to our fellow human beings. While his mother's head boiled on the stove, Joel Jr. continued working in the basement. He had prepared a chemical bath using muriatic acid, hydrogen peroxide, and bleach, hoping to dissolve his parents' remains completely. But the human body is remarkably resilient, even in death. The chemicals Joel Jr. had mixed created what investigators later described as a diabolical stew. But they weren't powerful enough to completely dissolve bone and tissue as quickly as he had hoped. As the hours passed and his timeline slipped away, Joel Jr. realized he had another problem. He had injuries, deep cuts on his own hands and arms, wounds that were bleeding heavily and required medical attention. Faced with these complications, Joel Jr. made a decision that would ultimately lead to his capture. He left the house, driving to a nearby Walmart to purchase first aid supplies. Security cameras captured him clearly injured, purchasing bandages and antiseptic. But while he was gone, the clock was ticking toward a discovery that would expose his crimes to the world. Lisa Guy was known for never missing work without calling in. When she failed to show up on Tuesday, November 29th, her supervisors grew concerned. Repeated attempts to reach her went unanswered. By evening, a welfare check was requested. Knox County deputies arrived at the house expecting to find an elderly couple who had fallen ill. What they found instead would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The smell hit them first. Overwhelming, sickly sweet, mixed with harsh chemical fumes. Inside, blood spatter-covered walls and floors. In the kitchen, the pot on the stove still contained what would later be identified as Lisa Guy's head. In the basement, a chemical bath filled with dissolved tissue and bone fragments. Personal belongings were scattered, soaked in chemicals or burned in an attempt to destroy evidence. Investigators discovered Joel Jr.'s notebook, a roadmap of horror written in the killer's own hand. The evidence was overwhelming. Hospital records showed Joel Jr. sought treatment for injuries consistent with violent struggle. Security footage placed him in Tennessee at the time of the murders. His DNA and fingerprints were found throughout the house. During trial, prosecutors painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and entitlement, willing to brutally murder the people who gave him life. The defense argued mental illness, but the jury deliberated less than 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all charges. During the penalty phase, Joel Guy Jr. asked to be put to death. The judge denied the request, sentencing him to multiple life sentences instead. Joel Guy Jr. showed no emotion as his sentence was read. He displayed the same cold detachment that allowed him to plan and execute the murders of his own parents. This is the story of Joel Guy Jr., a man who murdered his parents not in anger, but in greed, and it serves as a chilling reminder. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it lives under your roof. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another twisted tale from the world of true crime. And why not a little comment? Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Stay safe.